Hello everybody. In today's video I'll show you how to set up WireGuard VPN on your very own computer. We will be using Ubuntu as our operating system, and I'll also demonstrate how to access it remotely using SSH over cellular data. And by the end of the video you'll have a secure private VPN server at home. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this video helps you out. Alright, now we need to start by opening up Terminal. To get started here, and before we start anything, it's always a good practice to have your packets updated before you download anything. So we'll start here, do a quick update. Alright, now let's clear our screen. So to download WireGuard server, we use sudo adapt install WireGuard, and it's that simple. So it shows I already have it installed here. And to jailbreak and WireGuard uses public and private keys for encryption between the servers and the users. So let's generate the server's key pair to start off with. So to do that we use wg gen key. So this creates the private key, and we're gonna pipe it using this pipe operator into T, which this outputs the text that's being put into the text file, and also puts into the text file at the same time. So we use etc WireGuard, and then we're going to store our private key under private.key. Alright, but while we do this we should be in sudo mode, since it makes things very easy to so we don't have to run sudo every single time. So we'll paste the command here. Here's our private key, and now we need to generate our public key. So we use for our server, so use cat, we output the public key we just, or the private key we just wrote, and then we use wg pub key. This is what uses the private key to create the public key. We will use this public key in the peer's configuration file, and then we pipe it into its own text file. So WireGuard, and we will call this one public.key. And then here's our public key. Now that we have our public and private key for our configuration file, WireGuard uses its own IP addresses. So now we need to set the IPv6 and IPv4 address. And so the easy part is the IPv4, as we can just set it to use this IP address, and we'll use this subnet. But for the IPv6, it needs to be a unique, and a standard practice of creating this is to add the system date and the machine ID, and then hash it using the SHA-SUM algorithm. So we'll get those two. So use date, use plus this s, and then we'll use this, and this will get you the system date, and then we will use cat etc lib / dbbus / machine ID. I probably typed this wrong. Well, let's go back to dbbus. So we'll clear the screen here. So we'll go cat. Where is it stored? Okay, got it. It's not etc. It's lib, it's var. That's where it's stored under. So dbbus machine ID, and then here's our machine ID, and we'll get the date back out too. And to combine those, we will use printf to print them as one line, and we'll combine these. So we take our date, then machine ID, and then we use the pipe operator, which will take this output and then use the SHA-1 sum algorithm on this text. So here's our new hashed value. As you notice, it's in hexadecimal, which is what we need for the IPv6 address, but we don't need all these numbers. So we're going to use printf again, copy our output, and then we'll paste it here. And we will use the pipe outer once again, cut -c 31, and this is what we need right here. And we will just put it into its proper format. So to use the proper IPv6 format, we'll start with FD12 semicolon, then you use 0545 colon, and then we'll use BADC semicolon, and then we'll use we'll use 1 and then the subnet 64 for subnet here. So now that we have our public private key IPv4 IPv6 IP address, now we will create the server configuration file. So we're gonna call it wg0.config. This will be the name of our configuration file. And then inside here, you can just start by typing interface. So we do interface. This will be the interface for our server configuration file. We'll type in our IPv4 address as before, /24. Is that what we used? Yep. And then we use our IPv6 address, so our VPN server can use both of these. And then we'll use listen port. This will be where the VPN listens for, and we'll use its default port, which is 51820. And then I think that should be it for our... Oh wait, okay, we'll also need the private key that we generated for. So private / uppercase key K, and then let's go retrieve our file. So it's going to be under our private key. Private key, we'll copy our private key here for the server, and we'll put it under private key. And make sure there's a space in between these two. Alright. And then we'll tell WireGuard to save these. To make sure to save our configurations. So you save config equals true. And that should be all for our server configuration file. A peer section will be added whenever a client connects to your VPN server, and it'll save some information for their connection here, so we don't have to create those. Alright, now that we have our server configuration file, now we need to start the service to show you that everything's working properly for our configuration file. So we're gonna clear our screen, and then we're gonna use system timctl start wg quick at wg0.service. And it says we exited with an error from our configuration file from before. Let's open up our server configuration file and see what the issue is. Normally it comes down to me mistyping something. That's normally what the problem is. Let's make sure everything's typed correctly. Okay, so there's this listen port. You don't want to just type in listen. And we'll start the service again. And then we still have an issue here. So we'll open up our configuration file. So we have address. Then we have the address we selected. IPv6 address. Save configuration. Listen port is set up correctly. And then private key. And this should be correct. I don't see any problems here. So okay, we'll use status, see what the problem is. So it says failed to start service here. I had this set up, or I was able to set this up the day before, but for whatever reason the configuration file, and I can't even, let's see if we can open this up. Let's go. Okay. As we can see, I can't even make my fucking thing bigger. Gonna see what it says. Okay. So error and so there's an error with our IPv6 address. Maybe that's what it says. Let's go look at the format. Make sure it's all typed in correctly. Okay, that's our error. It's supposed to be a double semicolon right here for IPv6 address. Alright. Let's see if we can start it now. So we'll change this to start. So everything started. So that's kind of, if you type in status, it can give you a good clue what's the problem, and now everything is working correctly. You can type in wget-show. We see our private key, public key, private key, and listening port. So looks great. Now we can move on to generating the client configuration file. We'll start with its public and private keys because the client also has its own keys. We'll start by clearing the screen. We'll use wg gen key, and then we'll use pipe operator key t, etc. WireGuard, and then we'll call our client. We'll call it client slash private dot key, and this will store the private key and also output it in the clear text for us. Now we'll generate the public key as well. We'll use cat, which will output our private key, WireGuard client. Then we use the pipe operator here. We use wg public key pipe operator, and then we use key, and then we'll store the public key under client slash public slash dot key. And then here's our public key for the client. Now that we have these keys, we can generate the client configuration file. But first, let's get our IPv6 IP address, which we created earlier. So we'll output that. We'll output the server configuration file so we can copy our IPv6. Okay, now we can start creating the client configuration file. So we use nano, etc. WireGuard and then we'll call it wg0/client.config. That's how we'll name it. So we will now start with the interface for the client, and then we have our private key equals marks, and then we'll use address. This will be for our IPv4 address. So this can be whatever you set it as, but standard practice is to use it in this format. And we use our IPv6 address, which we created from earlier. And make sure to change these to 2, because this is for our client. And this number increments as more clients connect to your VPN client. And then we'll use Google as our DNS provider. So we just do 8.8.8.8. Alright, now let's go get our private key from before for the client. So we'll copy it, open our configuration file, and paste our private client key. Now we need to create a peer section for our peer file. So we'll call, and then this will have the public key for the server. So public key equals, and then we'll go to allowed IPs. Let's go get the public key for the server. So WireGuard, and then we'll use public key, and then here's the public key for the server. We'll copy this, and then we'll paste it into the public key section right here. And then we'll also tell which allowed IP information from the connected client, and this will be all the data on their device will be traveled through the VPN tunnel client. So we'll use this to select all of it, and then endpoint is going to be the destination. So you're going to put your public IP address on your router wherever you're hosting this. For me, for this example, I will block out the public IP address since I'm putting my outro one, so we can demonstrate that the VPN works using and I'll be using my cell phone service from my phone to demonstrate that the VPN client works properly. And then you type semicolon and then the port that you're going to export, and that should be good. This should and our client configuration file is complete. Now that we created our client configuration file, we need to tell WireGuard about our client configuration file. We just set it up. So we need the public IP address. We're gonna need the public key from our client, and we're also need the IPv6 once again, but we have it here, so that should make things simple. So you type in wg set wg0 peer, and then you paste your public key for the client right here, and then the allowed /IPs, and then you'll type in 10.8.0.1.2, and then we'll do our IPv6 address. You don't want to include the subnet for this section, as it takes care of that part for you. So we can check by using wg show, and we can see that our peer has been added here as expected. Alright, now we have pretty much everything set up for our VPN to be working, but now you should have a firewall enabled to make sure your device is secured. So we're going to show you how to allow these ports. It's very quick and simple. You do 51820, which is that port number for our WireGuard client, and then we're going to use 22 for the SSH client, which is what we're going to use to demonstrate that this works, or how I know how to demonstrate it. And we're also going to install SSH to allow clients to connect to your server, and we'll say yes, and then we'll start this, and then check the firewall rules to make sure everything is set correctly. So we'll do defu status. This is how you check your rules. So we have our SSH client, and then we have our VPN client. So we can tell that both of these are enabled, which is what we want. Now let's start the SSH service, and then we'll make sure it's running. Use status here. So it looks like everything's running. So now that we have our firewall rules properly set up, our next thing is we can generate. First, we need to forward the port number along with the IPv4 address that we set on our device that comes with our device. We can get our device IP address by using host name minus I. This is our IP address of our device here, and then now all you have to do is forward it. But I'll show you how to generate our QR code, so you can, if you're gonna set up this client on your phone, for example, it's a good resource to test this, because you don't want to be testing it on the same subnet. The whole purpose is to travel information over the internet. So using your cell phone service is a good way to test it. So we'll get a QR code generated to simplify the configuration file setup. If you're using like a laptop, for example, using WireGuard Connect, all you have to do is copy and paste your peer's configuration file or client into the create tunnel section. You just copy and paste it. It's pretty much, that's all you have to do. But if you bring it to a phone, it's a little bit harder to copy and paste. So we can create a QR code to make it easy. Client.config. Okay, oh yeah, we need to install QR code. So green code. We'll say yes. We'll like to download this. Alright, we'll clear our screen, and then we'll generate our QR code. Or we're not downloading it again. Alright, and then here's our QR code for our configuration file setup. And that should be all for this section. The next part will be port forwarding on the Linux router and demonstrating that our remote connection works. Alright, now we're going to be demonstrating how to port forward for our WireGuard service. As you can see under role names, that's going to be the name, and then the export port for the internal and external will be 15820. The device IP address will be 192.168.1.63, and the protocol will be IDP, UDP. And then we'll go to WireGuard here, where we can use the create from QR code to scan that QR from before, which created test. We will demonstrate that this VPN client works by turning off my Wi-Fi, as demonstrated. It shows that it's still there, but it should be off from the looks. And then we show that it connects, and yep, everything works. And that's it. You now have a fully working WireGuard VPN on Ubuntu, accessible from anywhere. If this video helps me, don't forget to like and motivate me to create more tutorial videos. And let me know in the comments if you have any questions.